All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Cybertron Scout class Wreckloose, another Decepticon from the jungle planet here. And yeah, this is a pretty neat little figure. Now, in terms of what he turns into, he's got this separate piece attached here that kind of houses the Cyber Planet key gimmick. And if you have that on, I guess he's supposed to be some kind of like non-distinct dinosaur. I'm not totally sure, but if you take this off, because it is removable, he more or less turns into a little Komodo dragon, which I really like. And personally, I kind of prefer the alt mode without this bit on, and it is nice that it is removable. Kind of interesting, yeah, he's one of the ones that has like the gimmick that basically is housed within the weapon that the figure has, rather than actually being kind of inherently tied to the figure itself. But yeah, if you want to attach it, he's just got this like little T-shaped slot on the back of his neck and a little T-shaped tab there, so you just plug it in like that. And for the Cyberplanet key gimmick itself, you just plug it into the back here, and then it ejects these kind of antlers forward like that, which is interesting. I guess he can use that to kind of like run past people and swipe their legs, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of a I don't know, not one of my favorite of the Cyberplanet key gimmicks, which is why personally I tend to just take this piece and leave it off to the side, because I prefer him just kind of turning into a just a more standard Komodo dragon. But whatever you want, it's a nice alt mode nonetheless. I like both versions of it. I just like this version a little bit better. But yeah, in terms of articulation, nothing at the head aside from the mouth being able to open and close about that far. The front legs here are just end up becoming the robot mode arms, so they're at swivels here at the thigh, I guess, and they can also hinge out to the side. Has a hinge here and a ball joint here for the knee, so you can get a pretty good range there, and then also that gives a thigh swivel there kind of below the knee. And then the feet itself have the robot mode hands on the back of them, but they can hinge up and down like that. And then for the back legs here, it's just a ball joint at the thigh and then a ball joint at the knee, and that's pretty much it. And then because of transformation, technically also does have a waist swivel, and then again, because of how the two halves of the tail will end up actually becoming the legs, interestingly, in robot mode, the two halves of the tail here are just attached via ball joints, because these will be the robot mode hips, so you can actually get like an angle like that, which is a nice piece of articulation that you don't often see on Beast Formers. And then again, where the robot mode knees end up being, you can kind of hinge it back and forth like that, and then you get a little bit of give in terms of like the tips of the tail end up being the feet, so you can kind of like tilt them up like that a little bit before they start locking up. But so some decent articulation. You can actually get this figure in kind of like a turned pose like that, which is kind of a neat effect there. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, just for a standard size comparison, here he is with Deluxe Class Kingdom Sideswiped, so you can see what he looks like with an average Deluxe Class figure. And then similarly, I didn't do this last time, but should have. Here he is with an average Core Class figure, since that's more equivalent to the old Scout Class figures. Core Classes are kind of the modern, slightly smaller version of that. For another Cybertron, new Cybertron comparison, here he is with Velocitron Override, who doesn't quite fit on camera there. And then for the figure that we looked at last time, here he is with Undermine. I really like the two of them kind of as a little, Decepticon, Jungle Planet, lizardy duo. I think that they look pretty cool together. But yeah, this figure has quite an interesting transformation scheme. I don't know that it totally ends up working out in its favor at the end, but it is kind of a neat idea because the legs of the figure will actually become the tail. So you basically rotate it just 90 degrees and then split the whole tail down the middle like this with the different colored sections, and then you rotate the bottom sections of the tail forward and then fold the tips of the tail forward to be the feet. And then unfortunately these legs don't really have a great place to go. Like this one I usually just kind of like wrap around the knee like that, and this one I just kind of like fold up onto the back, and it's a little bit haphazard. It's okay, but it's not like my favorite choice there. And then for the arms, you just want to fold up the feet so that they flip the hands forward, and then take the entire kind of front section of the Komodo dragon here and just fold it down to the side. And then you bring these sections forward, and then either you can rotate it forward at the shoulders or at the elbows. I'll talk about that because you have some kind of like articulation options here. But yeah, there we have Wreckloose in his robot mode. And yeah, it's okay. It's a little bit awkward, I'd say. He's kind of like a small guy with like these big, giant shoulder panels, and the legs they're okay, but they're a little bit awkward. Now, in terms of articulation, the head is on a swivel here, so it can rotate back and forth. The shoulders, so by default, ignoring this joint, the shoulders can rotate out like this and then also can hinge up and down just for that transformation joint. And then this piece itself, it does rotate, and then it also has a hinge here. So you can kind of decide whether you want the additional movement like going out to the side, so he can rotate his arms out to the side without having to move the shoulder panels. And then, just for the forward movement, just uses that joint. Or you can kind of rotate them this way so that they can't really rotate out to the side other than using that joint, but they can rotate forward without bringing the shoulders. I've gone back and forth on which I prefer. I think I tend to prefer this just because like it makes more of a difference, I think, to be able to slightly adjust the arm without adjusting the whole shoulder panel. So I tend to prefer it like that, but you do have that option there. And then in terms of elbows, that also does affect it a little bit, because then if you rotate it this way, then the hinge for the elbow is facing to the side. Still has that ball joint, but since that's the lower down joint, it does tend to run into like the dinosaur mode foot or Komodo dragon mode foot a little bit more. So if you have it rotated like this, he does get a bit more elbow bend without that foot really becoming an issue. It's a little bit weirdly high up, but I think that works a little bit better. So you've got those joints to work with in the arms there, depending on how you orient that that top shoulder joint. But I'm pretty sure this is how it's supposed to be, because that's what works best for the elbows. And then the hands can obviously hinge forward, but they bring the foot with it. He does have a waist swivel. He's got ball joints at the hips, so they can go forward and back. Obviously, however you have this foot kind of crunched up might get, moved around. And, only about that far out to the side. They don't really have a great side-to-side range, but whatever. He doesn't really have a thigh swivel proper. He does have a below-the-knee swivel just because of, how these rotate for transformation. A little less than 90 degrees of bend at the knee itself. And then, like I said, has that ball joint at the knee, which also has a cut out to the side. So you can do that for whatever reason. So I don't know if that would really be useful, because, it kind of acts as like a second sideways facing knee joint, but it's there if you can find some way to use it. And then the feet could just tilt kind of back for transformation, but that's about it. So, decent, but obviously kind of gets in his own way with like the big shoulder pads, and then the dinosaur mode or alt mode legs just kind of like hanging out on the back and the side. So whatever. Kind of a cluttered aesthetic here, but not terrible. And then in terms of the weapon, can he hold it? I think he must be able to hold it, but I can never really get it to like, yeah, you can get it into his hand, but it's kind of an awkward fit. And then again, like when you plug in the Cyberplanet key, like I don't know what that really accomplishes for the guy. Can you have him hold it the other way? Probably. I don't know which way it's supposed to go. I think when it's closed, it definitely looks better when it's, flipped around the other way. But when it's open, it looks better like this. But I kind of don't really think it looks that great either way as a weapon. Now, in terms of storage, it does actually take this into account, which is kind of unexpected for a Cybertron figure, which is nice. But he does have this hole in the back that has this little cutout there that kind of makes room for the slot on the T there, or the bottom section of the T. So you can plug it in like that. It does kind of mess with however you have this rotated, but if you have it kind of up like this, it doesn't really affect it. But then that kind of locks the waist joint in place. Otherwise, this is just kind of like work that off. So, however you want to do it, if you get that leg out of the way, it can store fairly nicely on his back, which is nice. And honestly, like, a lot of the Cybertron figures have these like big, ridiculous weapons and then nowhere to put them in robot mode. So I do appreciate that he has that consideration, even if I don't think that the weapon itself is really all that great, but it is nice that he does do that. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Sideswipe and Soundwave, just for some standard size comparisons. Obviously, Scout class figures of old are a little bit bigger than our current core class figures, but it's kind of the most equivalent size class to today. Here he is again with Override. And then here he is again with Undermine. And like I said, I really think that the two of them make a pretty good duo. I might want to try to pick up, I think its name is Brimstone at some point, the one that turns into a little pterodactyl, because then I feel like that would make like a good like trio of of like Decepticon Jungle Planet guys, or if they ever end up doing like a new version of Cybertron Scourge, I feel like he'd go with them as well. But I don't really the existing Cybertron Scourge, I think, just looks a little bit too brick-like for my taste, so I've never really been wanting to pick that up, and it's kind of hard to find with like all of its like parts and the tail and everything for a good price anyway, so I've never really bothered with that. But if they ever made a new version of Scourge, which not unlikely considering all of the new sort of like Unicron trilogy updates they've been doing, I think that these guys would look pretty good with him. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. Not as good as Undermine in my opinion, but he's got some fun stuff going for him. I do really like the Komodo Dragon mode. I think it looks pretty good. Robot mode is a little bit awkward, but it's not terrible. I don't really love the weapon, but I do appreciate that it actually has a place to go in both modes, which is not something that even modern figures always do, so I do enjoy that. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to them. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Make sure to check me out on my Instagram account. That's toys.n.art. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Cybertron Scout Class Wreckloose.